Stemming from the creative minds of a hit Tubi original, or at least that's what it sounds like, Nivea was one of those ones who may not have necessarily lasted long in the urban hemisphere, but she surely left her mark. Not to get it confused with the ever so convenient skincare brand, the equally sultry and reliant singer was prevalent in the 106 and Park days of BET's last good years, adding on to the early 2000s playlist of music that made life a whole lot better. Nivea, despite having successful singles like the 2001 hit Don't Mess With My Man and the Girly Girls OK anthem, was on the brink of throwing in the towel, never to be heard from again. What you don't know was that behind her young success came a whole bunch of yucky, ooky mess. A runaway, illegal sexual escapades with a manager, triple her age, family addictions, baby mama drama, you name it! This is the insane, incredulous, untold story of Nivea. We've come across a lot of downright insane stories from celebrities, but this right here, I promise, is wild from beginning to end. A real treat for thriller fans, but unfortunately this isn't a story of fiction. Born Nivea Hamilton, a guide on how to navigate trifling Decepticons in the music industry should be the title of Nivea's book if she ever decides to write a memoir about her incredulous life, because my, it is a story to behold. Jumping from adolescence into early teenagehood, coming from a musically inclined background with her parents both being musicians, as well as her two other sisters, Nivea always knew she wanted to sing. She knew she could sing, but never had the courage to sing in front of anyone. I'm talking more nervous than a dude who told you not to worry about the girl you should definitely be worried about. Nivea refused to let anyone hear her voice. Friends, relatives, her own siblings, nobody. Until one day, thanks to her oldest sister bringing in those connections. Being a singer herself, Nivea's sister knew a guy who knew a guy that could possibly get them signed. At just 14 years of age, Nivea and them went around the city of Atlanta, Georgia, whilst living with their grandparents on the south side. Being an emotional support system, Nivea's middle sister, Reba, offered to come along to be Nivea's personal Migo, ad-libbing away. Needless to say, everybody in the kin was shocked that Nivea, out of all of them, stepped up to the plate first, an action that proved to be both good and absolutely horrifying. With as much confidence as she could muster up, Nivea sang for the underground producer whose feedback was mostly positive. I hear a little something. You've got something there. We just need to tweak it a bit. From that point on, Nivea was in there. She'd spend every weekend going back to Atlanta to record. With no budget, investors, or backing, a studio in the back of a low-profile rim shop off Camel Road was all the producer, whom we trust, we wish we could name, could afford. Selling his equipment aided in getting Nivea to look the part of a potential celebrity. While Nivea was out and about attempting to turn her dreams into her reality, the backstory to how she got to that point is not for the faint of heart. The crack addiction of the 80s took black neighborhoods by storm. Although it should have been avoided like the plague at all costs, for whatever reason, crack was more common than seeing a child playing in a busted fire hydrant on a hot summer's day in New York. Both of Nivea's parents were on that stuff. Bad. Fortunately, Mama Hamilton fought the life-altering habit by the time Nivea decided to venture out into her own music career. Unfortunately for Nivea, her mama getting sober didn't do much when it came to keeping Nivea safe from outside forces, penetrating her naive, impressionable mind. Life was something that Niv had to figure out all on her own, and she'd get hit with the rundown, written-in, raggedy textbooks of Ghetto University, because ghetto was the situation she'd find herself in. Ghetto and outright illegal. Y'all thought our Pissy was the only one with a questionable and highly disturbing past? No, they were really out here rocking like that all out in the open, especially back in the day. At just age 15, Nivea ran away from home, but was forced to come back due to her parents hitting up local authorities to bring their daughter back from the streets. In this case, back from the hands of Nivea's manager, who was no longer just her manager, but now her man's. Only problem is he was dang near 40. Since the first runaway wasn't successful, Nivea thought she'd try again just a year later, and this time she was successful. Nivea and that man by that point were living together in a shared apartment, all whilst Nivea was still attending high school. Although nobody outright asked if she and old dude literally were together, Nivea says people had their suspicions. including her own mama. It got to a point where Nivea was tired of her manager's shenanigans and decided to sever ties relationship-wise. That didn't mean he still wasn't attempting to get back with her. He continued managing her career, and Nivea even got another boyfriend that didn't last long, thanks to, that man who got into her head yet again and convinced her to break things off with the 21-year-old. Nivea was the manager's golden ticket into the music scene and eventually scored Nivea her first break, featuring on Mystikal's hit Danger, where she sang the chorus. Contrary to the low budget nowadays, Nivea found herself in $1 million deal and used the coins to purchase not one, but 2 homes. She was talented, pretty, but directionless. The label just didn't know where to place her. Was she urban? Pop? Both? One thing about it, urban radios were not trying to play any Nivea tracks. In fact, they refused to play her music for a long time. It didn't help that they were trying to market her as a Black Britney Spears. Despite making a buzz with her debut single, Don't Mess With the Radio, along the way, she noticed she wasn't making that bag like she should have been. Meanwhile, back at the studio, her manager was collecting all of her coins. Boldly confronting him turned out to be a semi-mistake, cause before she knew it, she was being yoked up and dragged every which way throughout the house. Old dude was inside dragging young Nivea by her avant-garde and colorful locks. With bruises covering her body, she quickly ran out of the house, seeking the nearest police line to dial up someone she knew she could trust. None other than Wheezy F Baby. After seeing Nivea working on her Don't Mess With the Radio music video, Wayne knew he wanted to get in contact with her. So, using his connections, he got in contact with her label at the time, Jive Records, who scheduled a recording session between the two. Once their worlds collided, Wayne didn't even care about the music. He just wanted a way to get the digits. After Wayne advised Nivea to call the police on her manager, she attempted to go back to the crib to gather her belongings, to which she was met with resistance. According to her manager, everything Nivea owned, he owned. She wasn't trying to deal with none of that, so Nivea packed up her bags full of air, even leaving her graduate degrees, and headed out to NOLA. Now, out and about in Louisiana, Nivea was betting on leaving her manager for good, especially after an incident where Nivea says she was practically R-worded outside a liquor store on top of a car hood by a friend of the manager, whom she says she believes was planned, given that she was very much underage and he stayed buying and giving her the liquor. Old manager dude was basically Nivea's pimp. He'd do and say little things here and there to get into her head, even pressuring her to sleep with his homeboys. Thanks to Wayne, Nivea got the courage to cut ties with her manager for good, and her music career would suffer the same fate. By this point, Nivea had no drive to continue on with her musical endeavors, nor did she realize just how much buzz she cultivated already. Wayne and Nivea dated for a while in 2002 and got engaged in the same year. It didn't take long for Nivea to settle into Wayne's home, and it wouldn't be long before he tricked her into moving out into a shared apartment that she later found out wasn't bought with pure intentions. You know, I never had an apartment before. We should get one. Wayne then smooth-talked Nivea into getting an apartment, but it was only because he wanted to usher in his first child's mother, Regina Carter's mom, Toya Wright, into the house. After doing an interview with Sister to Sister magazine in July of 2002, Nivea gushed about her engagement with Wayne. But just a month later, he had called off the engagement. And if you're wondering if Nivea knew Toya was back in the picture, absolutely not. Imagine her shock when Wayne invited her to one of his parties, got on the microphone, and did a whole heartfelt speech aimed at Toya. Boy, Nivea was mad. Needless to say, she cussed everybody out from one end of the earth to the other, but Wayne wound up smooth-talking himself out the situation yet again. He even paid Nivea's rent for 7 months while she lived with a roommate, a female rapper who was also managed by Nivea's ex-manager. 7 months passed before Nivea up and left yet again, this time to live with her older sister for about a week. She was Nivea, on the radio, on television, but Sister Girl needed the money to match the status. So babes it was. Yes, the strip joint, but not so fast. As much as she wanted to live out her fantasy of becoming a stripper, she went in as a waitress. She even hit up Jive Records in hopes of working on another album. A guy who knew a guy would then introduce her to her future husband and the father to 3 of her children, Terrius Nash, otherly known by his stage name, The Dream. Shawty, use a 10. We still in the year 2003. What started out as two creators having a fantastic bond quickly turned into a love union. When they finally did go on their first date, Nivea went to Dream's residence and never left. However, Wheezy had other plans in mind. He wanted that old thing back. Of course, Dream advised her not to do it. This was before Dream and Nivea were official. The two would end up getting engaged just a month after officially dating and got pregnant rather quickly. Word on the street is she was even pregnant in her OK music video featuring Lil Jon. Nivea was officially a married woman by the time 2004 rolled around. Her label dropped her single, Complicated, which ironically described the situation Nivea found herself in yet again. The label just wasn't interested in pushing her or her music any longer. Why? Because of the new girl on the block. Hailing in as the crunk queen, Ciara had the label and the music industry's full undivided attention. Nivea, on the other hand, was getting the boot, willingly. They just weren't interested in whatever Niv was selling, so much so they even wanted the Dream to give Nivea's hit single OK, written by Dream, to Ciara. Dream and Nivea's union would last a few years before he eventually decided to call it quits in 2007, following their work on Nivea's Animalistic album, leaving her devastated. Overwhelmed with life in general, Nivea let herself go throughout the years, and Dream just didn't care enough to want the marriage to work. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Lil Wayne was still trying to win over his old love. After his hairstylist got in contact with Nivea, Niv decided to meet up with him, got knocked up quickly, then dipped. Didn't help that he had the nerve to have a sit-down, face-to-face conversation, informing her that he got another lady pregnant at the same exact time. He then gave Nivea the revelation that Lauren London was also soon to be his child's mother. Nivea was taken aback at first, but over time she and Lauren bonded over their pregnancies, becoming closer than ever. Can you say sister wives? Unfortunately, during her pregnancy, Nivea's mother passed away right in Nivea's home, where the rest of her immediate relatives lived. Even worse, she ended up having a whole stroke after continuously eating salt from a salt shaker stashed in her purse to combat nausea during her pregnancy. Fortunately, she made a full recovery. Dibbling in and out of the studio was the only thing anchoring her to music until things eventually came to a halt. Singing around the house didn't even feel right to her, and soon enough, Nivea came face to face with depression. Depression led to addictions, alcohol before transitioning into more hardcore drugs like perks and cocaine. A generational curse found its way into its next hostess and completely took over Nivea's life. Her early 30s had been the first time she tried it. The willpower to live was close to none. After her mama's death came her grandma's, who passed right there on Nivea's couch, the same location as her daughter. Nivea was obsessed with her children, loved being their mother, and did everything for them. However, by this point, she didn't want to even be a mom. Before the cocaine binge and alcohol, chain smoking those cancer sticks was her addiction of choice. And as wild as this next part sounds, cocaine, similar to her fantasy stripper job, was her fantasy hard drug of choice. Cocaine had her in such a chokehold, crumbs in the carpet would suffice if it meant getting her fix in. An 8-day rehab stay didn't immediately fix the situation, and Nivea believed she was going to lose her children. Wayne was sweet yet dishonest, and we don't even need to get into her ex-manager. Now, more than ever before, Nivea has found the light at the end of that once dark tunnel, and has not only got her mojo back, but been in the studio with music set to be released. As of current, you can find her on Peacock's reality dating show Queen Court, along with Tamar Braxton and Evelyn Lozada. Was Nivea's story wild or what? Let us know your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments, and stay tuned for more true celebrity stories.